SmackDown on Friday was a different story. Vince was not there. He was rumored to be at an Eagles concert in New Jersey. They were playing the Prudential Center. I have no idea if that's actually true or not. I have not seen any photographic evidence of this. I know Sean Ross Sapp mentioned it. I think that's where it came from. I can't tell if he was being serious or not. I know Vince was spotted years ago at an AC/DC concert with John Cena. I want to say this was like 2008, 2009, something like that. So it's not like he's never been to a concert before. I don't care where he was, so long as he was not in Portland wearing a headset. And he wasn't, although he did apparently call in remotely to make some minor changes to the show. But Triple H was back in the chair, and he was back out to the ring for another speech, his second speech of the week. He opened Raw Monday night with a big rah-rah speech, patting themselves on the back about how big WrestleMania was, but it was more to reassure the audience on the day that the Endeavor news broke that, without actually saying the word Endeavor or UFC or actually what the news was, he kind of alluded like, you've heard WWE's been in the news today, and it was him going out there, probably at the behest of Vince, who probably wanted him to do it also, and say, look, reassure the audience that we're not going anywhere. This is going to be the same WWE they know and love, and just tell them that nothing is going to change and we're not going anywhere. So he came out again on Friday night for another speech. A very similar speech. This one was to talk up WrestleMania being such a big success. They touted like 1 billion digital views, and then he announced the actual news of the segment, which was the return of the WWE Draft, coming up in a few weeks. He said every WWE superstar would be eligible this year, and that when all is said and done, this year's draft will truly change the game. It's been 18 months since the last draft. Drew McIntyre, Jeff Hardy, and Charlotte Flair, they all went from Raw to SmackDown. Edge, Rey Mysterio, Dominic Mysterio, and Bianca Belair all went from SmackDown to Raw. Those were the big moves. Austin Theory was called up from NXT to Monday Night Raw. Hit Row was called up to SmackDown, and that didn't last very long. B-Fab was released a month later, and then the rest of the group was released 2 weeks after that, including Swerve Strickland. So those are the big draft moves last time. All talent being eligible would include all of the champions. Every tag team, everyone on the NXT roster, as they should be. There's no reason for NXT not to be included in this. In fact, I'll bet you that's why we didn't get any NXT call-ups this week, coming out of WrestleMania. Usually the Raw after Mania, maybe SmackDown after Mania, we get a new debut or even some vignettes start airing, coming soon. Somebody's getting called up. We got nothing. We got nothing this week. And I'll bet you that's why we didn't, because they're saving them for the draft. The positive in this, if you actually give a shit about any of this, and I don't know why you would, is that April or May is a much better time than October to do a draft. It never made any sense to do it before Survivor Series when they were doing the Raw versus SmackDown stuff, because how much brand loyalty can somebody have if they've only been drafted there a few weeks before the show, right? This is the time, if you're going to do it, this is the time to be doing it. And Triple H is still working off of Vince McMahon's roster configuration. This would be Triple H's first chance to reshape the roster the way that he wants it to be. That is, if you believe that Triple H is going to have carte blanche to make the changes that he wants to make. The shadow of Vince McMahon looms large. There's no way he doesn't get his fingers in this in some way. So it is hard for me to bring myself to care about any of this. The draft is largely meaningless anyway. Whether Vince McMahon was around or not, the draft is largely meaningless. People move freely between brands. Raw stars appear on SmackDown. SmackDown stars appear on Raw. Raw and SmackDown stars sometimes appear on NXT. The New Day went to NXT only a few months ago, became tag team champions. Johnny Gargano just returned to NXT for a match with Grayson Waller. And you know what? I think that's great to have that freedom, so then why have a draft? Why exactly are we supposed to care about the draft? If they split the top 2 titles, that would be one reason to care, and I think doing so now would be a big mistake. Had Cody won at WrestleMania, they could have announced that they were splitting the titles as part of the draft, with the WWE title staying with Cody on Raw, and the Universal title staying on SmackDown. You crown a new champion, however way you want to crown a new champion. Have a tournament, however you want to do it. But Roman Reigns still has both belts. He's going to hit 1,000 days as the champion next month. The only way Roman Reigns should lose those titles is by being pinned for both of them. When Roman Reigns defends those titles, he always defends them together because they are unified. When he beat Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania last year, they announced as soon as the bell rang and the match was over, the titles were unified. Even the Usos defended their titles separately a few times earlier this year, but not Roman Reigns. He needs to be beaten for both of those belts. Then WWE can split the titles if they want to, not before. Otherwise, the one that he gives up, which probably would be the WWE title because he's held that for less time, this whole, 1,000 days he's going to hit, that really is for the Universal title. So if you do that, though, what you run the risk of doing, he gives up the WWE title, let's say, it just becomes a consolation prize for whoever wins it. The tag team titles they can split, but they need more tag teams to make it worthwhile to have separate belts on both brands again. It's the same problem we had when they unified them in the first place. These tag team divisions individually on their own per show are not strong enough, I don't think, to sustain 2 sets of tag team titles. I would rather still have 1 set of champions that float between Raw and SmackDown. And don't forget, we know how fond Vince McMahon is of splitting up tag teams for no reason when it comes to the draft. That'll be a telltale sign of just how involved he really is, if we see multiple teams being broken up for no reason. The Street Profits is actually one of those teams I would expect to be split up, with Montez Ford going wherever Bianca Belair goes, and then Angelo Dawkins goes to the other brand. But again, do they really need 2 sets of tag team belts per show? Just stick with the floating champion model until you beef up those divisions a little bit more. What about factions? They have multiple factions in this company. The Bloodline. How could the draft affect the Bloodline story? Would they actually send 1 member of the Bloodline or 2 members of the Bloodline to a brand other than whatever the home base brand is for them? I don't think they do that with the Bloodline, but you have the Judgment Day. Yeah, the Judgment Day I could see being split up. And I think, and I said this on Friday, I think somehow this all leads to Dominic leading the LWO. Their babyface turn was just so sudden. I still cannot shake this feeling that they're setting up Ray for a big beatdown. And Dominic is going to end up with the LWO. But I think the groups that are most susceptible to being split are the Judgment Day and Damage Control. Been a lot of talk about Damage Control, the future of the group, Bayley being unhappy. Supposedly that's not true. She's not unhappy or leaving the company, but I'm sure she can't be happy about the state of Damage Control right now. Damage Control, to me, looks like it's on its way out, which I think would be a plus for Io Sky, because I think she should be on her own as a babyface doing her own thing. But those are the 2 groups I think are most susceptible to being broken up. They need to get some new faces up from NXT. There is more than enough people to choose from who are ready to be called up. Braun Breaker, Grayson Waller, Cameron Grimes, who's been stuck in purgatory between the 2 brands now for months and months. Pretty Deadly. Talking about tag teams, there's a tag team you can call up that's main roster ready. Zoe Stark, Caden Carter, and Katana Chance as a team. All of them should be under consideration for Raw or SmackDown, and this is their chance to draft Kevin Patrick to NXT Level Up to replace him on Monday Night Raw. Replace him with who? I haven't figured that out yet. I don't know. I know that he's not it. He's not the guy, long term. But maybe they can draft Kevin Patrick to Level Up. How many people watch Level Up? I don't know. Probably not a lot. But they need to decide. Ultimately, it comes down to this. They need to decide, do they want to do the draft like they used to do in the early days or in 2016? SmackDown more so than Raw. They came out of that looking great, right? Raw still sucked, but SmackDown was on fire for a while there, coming out of that draft, if I remember, in 2016. Do they want to go that route, or do they handle the draft like they do every other year, where a bunch of faces change the color of their t-shirt and not much else changes? Because right now, there are no rules, and they have only one authority figure in Adam Pearce making all the decisions for certain things and not for others, like, I don't know, someone defying the referee, ejecting them from the WrestleMania main event and influencing the outcome of the match. I'm just saying, It's about time that we have one person overseeing Raw, one person overseeing SmackDown, if they insist on keeping these brands separate, and then actually keep them separate. With the exception of a few trades the two GMs can negotiate throughout the year. That would be the way to do it. If they're not going to do it that way, there's no point in having a draft.